Kicking off this hour, I'm joined live in the studio by the opposition leader, Sussan Ley. Thanks for your time.
Pleasure, Kieran. You're surrounded by amendments. You're going to be an expert.
Lots of amendments to this environmental law. You probably haven't been able to go through it in full detail yet, but from what you're hearing from your environment spokesperson, are you open to accepting these amendments put forward by Murray Watt?
These are totally insufficient, Kieran. The Minister hasn't met us halfway on half our concerns and has clearly mismanaged this entire process. And reluctantly, that's my conclusion at the moment when I listen to Andrew, who's done an outstanding job, just asking patiently for information on the things that we were indicated would be forthcoming, and a little bit here and there is absolutely not going to cut it when it comes to the very real concerns that we have. But we met as a shadow cabinet yesterday. This information wasn't put before us, and look, Murray Watt has mismanaged this process. His predecessor, Tanya Plibersek, mismanaged it as well. I think the Prime Minister needs to step in. I'm prepared to meet with him about this. In fact, Kieran, I'll meet with him every week for the next 8 weeks over summer, because I understand the importance of detailed legislation being done properly.
To do this leader to leader this week,
absolutely.
To get it done?
Well, when I look at the mismanagement so far, this is not what business and industry or ourselves have been asking for. And when you consider the outcome for communities and jobs, if this legislation goes through in the wrong way, I mean, that is something that we really have to be very cautious about. Now, we've been consistent, Kieran. There's no surprises in where we stand on what's important to us. We've been consistent for 6 months. The Greens, I don't agree with them, but they've been consistent for 6 months. You've now got Murray Watt standing with 2 separate amendments, one in each hand, saying, I don't mind who I do this deal with. Could be the Greens, could be the Coalition, just give me a deal. Well, what that shows is this is a person after a political fix, not someone who's serious about environmental legislation. That is about protecting the environment. It's about communities and jobs. It's about the projects that we need to keep those communities and jobs strong. It's about our future. And it's about energy.
What are your key concerns or red lines, as you said? You're a former minister in this space as well.
The issue of unacceptable impacts has not been addressed, and what we hear from industry is that right now, as it stands, that would rule out whole swathes of existing projects because they simply wouldn't meet the arbitrary test. Now, that hasn't been mentioned at all in any of the amendments, even though it's been a subject of discussion. $825 million in penalties. There was also a suggestion about, well, is that reasonable in every situation, when you connect it with a stop workability that might exist under this. And the standards, Kieran, I mean, I'm familiar with the standards that underpin environmental law. There's 2 that have been shown to us. There's at least 6 more. They haven't appeared anywhere, and we're expected to agree, sight unseen, to something that has no reality in terms of the black and white letter law. I mean, this is the Parliament of Australia.
And you've told
this is the Senate.
You've said this to Murray Watt. Do you expect him to go back to the...
These messages have been communicated to Murray Watt via Angie Bell and Senator John O'Doniam in the Senate, because we stand ready. We've asked for information. It hasn't come forward. So it's been really badly mismanaged by this Environment Minister. I mean, really badly managed. And as I said, I think the Prime Minister, he knows the effect, I assume, of bad law on outcomes, particularly in the resources states of Western Australia, the Northern Territory and Queensland.
The Minister has put forward 5 amendments to you, 6 amendments to the Greens. Most of the Greens' changes include limiting the fast-tracking of fossil fuel projects or limiting the streamlined assessment pathway for coal and gas projects. If you don't do a deal, they end up doing it here and limiting pathways for gas projects, which many Labor people, including Labor premiers, are well aware that we might and do need much more gas over the coming decades.
Of course we do, and part of our energy plan is all about more gas. But if this Labor Party does a dirty deal with the Greens, they will stand condemned in those communities and by the hardworking Australians in those jobs in the resources sector. Now, they're tiptoeing around this. They really are not being upfront with the Australian people about what their intentions are. Energy is vital, and part of our energy future is LNG, as I've been making the point this week with respect to our affordable energy and responsible emissions plan.
So would that be a disaster if that
absolutely
if those amendments were to be imposed? So therefore,
yes,
the onus is on you to get a deal as well.
No, the onus isn't on us. The onus is on the government to look Australians in the eye and actually tell them that they elected this Labor Party to back in the resource sector, the importance of that resource sector to our national income, to the jobs that it provides, and to actually do the right thing with respect to both protecting the environment and allowing resource projects to progress. Because if we don't have resource projects, we don't have investment, we don't have income, we don't have jobs. WA knows this better than anyone. Now, if Murray Watt and Anthony Albanese are seriously considering a dirty deal with the Greens, then they need to fess up about that right now, because that would take us on a massive step backwards. When you consider what LNG and the exports of gas does both for, the decarbonisation of our nearest neighbours, but also for our export income. And part of our plan, of course, Kieran, is an East Coast gas reservation project, Australian gas for Australians first. We believe that we can do a lot better when it comes to energy affordability for our households and businesses.
Sounds like the government's planning a reservation too. I wonder how that fits in with some of those Green amendments. The Minister will join me in 20 minutes or so I'll ask him at that point. But I want to ask you about another point you've been making in relation to Chris Bowen. You call him a part-time energy minister. Isn't it good that Australians have a seat at the table and can chair some of the important international talks?
No, it's not, Kieran, because at that table are a range of countries who do not have Australia's national interest front and centre as their primary concern. So this part-time energy minister will be in charge of a part-time energy grid. And Australians know it's a part-time energy grid because it's gone from electricity prices have gone up 40%, gas prices have gone up 40%. Households and businesses are struggling in the lead up to a hot summer and all the expenses they face at the kitchen table, with Christmas, with summer, with back to school. And at the heart of that is energy costs, because when energy is affordable, everything is unaffordable. And I make this point that this government is setting targets they can't meet at a cost Australians can't afford, with a trifecta of energy failures, prices going up, reliability going down, emissions flatlining. And yet this part-time minister thinks that he's got some role to play internationally.
He says he backs, the likes of Matthias Cormann internationally whenever there's an international agreement or body that an Australian can participate in. He'll back them to do it. He says that you're always arguing against Australia in this context.
I'm not worried about international players and what they're doing with respect to a range of issues. I only back Australian families. I only back affordable energy and responsible emissions reduction. And I know that Australians want a government that backs them, because it's getting really, really hard. And when I look at this government across the table, as I will shortly in question time, Kieran, as I did yesterday, we did not get a single answer or a simple answer to when power prices are coming down, or how this part-time energy minister, overseeing a part-time energy grid, is actually going to place the interests of Australian households and Australians' energy affordability front and centre. And I've barely started on manufacturing, Kieran, but it's a subject, as you know, close to my heart. But we're not making things in Australia anymore. Everything's coming in on overseas supply chains, and that's because it's too expensive to manufacture in this country under this government's policies. It's a disgrace.
And before you go, the burqa stunt from Pauline Hanson last night, what's your response to that? And also the steak dinner that you had with Barnaby Joyce. It looks like he's on the way out of the coalition.
Well, two things, Kieran. It does go to show how brittle the politics of One Nation are, and cheapening the status and the symbolism of the Senate in such a way is unsupported by the majority of Australians. To bring back a stunt from, I think, 2017, I think the less said about it, the better.
Should they just let her introduce the bill as a Member of Parliament?
Well, stunts are just not welcome. It's as simple as that. And as I said, it goes to show the brittle nature of politics. Now, I notice also that Barnaby had a steak dinner, and Barnaby's a friend of mine, and he can have steak with whoever he wants on a parliamentary sitting night, and I'll leave the commentary to others.
Okay. Sussan Ley, thanks for your time. I appreciate it.